Welcome to episode 8 of Marketing Operators. We've got a packed episode. We start out with our second official test of the week from Cody, who breaks down a very high-performing channel. I'll be sending to my performance creative team and paid social team to get that in the works immediately, so I definitely recommend giving it a listen. The rest of it is a Q&A, so we fielded a bunch of questions and comments from people on Twitter and YouTube. Some people emailed in. We go over team building, channel expansion, and then my submitted question was going through our over and underrated software providers. So I think it's a great listen. Before we get any further, I'd love everyone to take a moment to subscribe to the podcast. We typically don't call this out till the end, but I think it's so important that we get this information in the minds of as many marketers as possible. So any subscriptions are appreciated, or share with your teams and colleagues and friends. And lastly, thank you to our sponsors, premier sponsor Motion, Aftersell, Richpanel, and Haus. So I heard a great metaphor this week talking to my team about our premier sponsor, Motion. We were talking about getting better at performance creative, and someone said it's a lot like playing basketball. If you want to be a professional basketball player, you can't just shoot free throws. You've got to train, you've got to practice, you've got to eat well. And Motion is the equivalent of watching game film. If you're a basketball player, you're watching the plays back, you're learning, you're planning for the future. That's what Motion allows you to do. It's analytical rigor for your performance creative teams. So if you want to add that level of knowledge to your teams, the same as Ridge, Hexclad, Jones Road, Viore, you can go to motionapp.com and get your first month free if you mention Marketing Operators to the podcast. And Cody's got some more special details.
Yeah, one thing I love about Motion, in addition to making great software that can unify marketing and creative teams, they also put out a lot of amazing information, a lot of helpful resources, and they actually have something great going on. The Make Ads That Convert 2024 is coming up soon. It's a 2024 Supergroup edition. There are going to be 4 performance marketing megastars in one place for the first time. The undisputed ad experts together on one stage. You're going to have Myrella Crespi, the performance ad mastermind, Dara Denny, the ultimate creative strategist, Jess Bachman, the creativity machine, and Savannah Sanchez, the TikTok and Meta creative force, all in one place. Weekly live sessions for free. It's a must-attend event that I'm going to have my whole team at. The best part, it's a free event with live sessions every Thursday, starting May 23rd and going to June 20th. I'll be there. My team is there. I hear the Ridge team has moved around their whole schedule to be there. Can't miss event of the season.
It's like watching game film from the 2008 Miami Heat or something. It's gonna be a great show. We're moving meetings around so more of the Ridge team can join. So we hope to see you guys there. Do you guys listen to My First Million?
Yeah, I do.
As any good e-commerce operator, we you do the bi-weekly listen to My First Million.
And
that was really and all in, of course. And what's that other the something operators?
Haven't heard that one.
Yeah, never.
Yeah, I occasionally listen. But no, My First Million, they did a really interesting thing where they've been on this spiel recently, the last couple of weeks, about doing hard things. And they challenged their listeners to like a fitness challenge. They were like, we want you to record and post doing 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and 100 burpees. And they had prizes for the winner. They worked with Nike Strength. They were giving away some cold plunges, stuff like that, for who could be the fastest, as well as like style points or whatever. How long do you think it would take you guys to do 100 squats, 100 push-ups, and 100 burpees?
I'm going to say in my current shape, which is not my best, probably 25 to 30 minutes. I don't know.
That seems reasonable.
I don't know.
I think the squats would be the quickest.
Easy.
The push-ups would probably be like, I feel like 7, 8 minutes. The burpees would crush me. Like I'd be 10 burpees in and I'd be huffing and puffing. I feel like the burpees would take me at least 10 minutes, probably closer to 12. I'm probably 20.
Ooh, yeah, I think that sounds ambitious. I'll be honest with you. We haven't hung out in person in a while, so I'm not sure how physically fit you are. I'm used to like just the chest up.
I'm stocky.
Chest up though.
I'm stocky. Yeah. I'm not cardio. I'm not built for cardio. I'm built for power.
How tall are you?
Like 6 feet tall. Well,
all right. Yeah, big guy. Yeah. Yeah, so I was gassed for like exactly what it took me forever to do the burpees. Yeah, I did it because I was like, I was excited to accept the challenge of doing something hard. I've been saying recently, I feel like I might not be as gritty as I was when I was like 23, 24 years old. In my old age, I think I'm getting soft. So I was like, dude, I got to do something hard. Took me just over 30 minutes because burpees took me forever. And I bring it up now because like my arms are so sore, like back here, because like basically 2 push-ups. Like I'm struggling to like take my headphones off. Like my arms are not bending to touch my head. So I am like, physically, I feel injured. Basically, I'm so sore. I'm like disabled. So anyway, that was my big weekend.
All right, maybe I'll try this.
Plan.
We'll talk about it next week if I beat you. If
we gotta have like a competition.
We're just not gonna bring it up.
Yeah, we'll never mention it again. I didn't post. I didn't feel confident enough about my time.
You didn't think you were gonna win. Your style wasn't good.
Oh, well, dude, some guy did it in like 9:30. I had a buddy do it in 12 minutes flat, and he's like the fittest guy I know. So like that's kind of the standard. And my form was ugly. Like it was not pretty. Maybe I'll send you guys some of the clips. I'm like, I am just dragging myself through this.
Proud of you though, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I did feel
work.
Accomplished. Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, didn't you say you're on a new regimen, or you said you're on a new workout and or diet regimen? I think you mentioned that a few episodes ago.
I've lost a couple pounds and I've been mostly running. That's the other excuse I'll give myself for not being able to do, 100 push-ups and 100 burpees is I can run a couple miles faster than I could a couple months ago.
Okay.
But enough about my fitness. I'll keep you guys posted. I'm actually getting married at the end of the month, so I'm like trying to look at the photos. Nice. Yeah, thanks. No, dude, let's get right into it. We're starting with the test of the week. I think our second official segment of the test of the week. Cody's kicking us off with his most recent learnings.
Man, I don't know how I top that. Guy's getting married. He's probably got a 6-pack right now. I don't know how I follow that up. That's hard. I'm over here like Sean Frank on the elliptical because my old body with a bum hip can't handle running and lifting heavy anymore. But yeah, so let's get into it. Yeah, I'm excited about this. So I think I talked about it maybe on the episode with Dave, and a few episodes ago we launched Pinterest, probably somewhere around a month ago. I'm just checking in North Beam now. We've spent $60,000, so I believe it's probably just about a month ago. We launched with the holdout, so right out the gate, we launched it with the Haus setup. Let me pull it up. I believe we ran something like a 40% holdout. Yeah, so essentially we targeted 60% of the country. Haus gave us the geos to exclude. Something like $2K a day. They gave a little credit, but I think net it was probably something around $2,000 a day. And crushed it. Really good. I'm super impressed out the gate. So I was expecting to see part of the reason we launched with Haus is like I want to know incrementality regardless of what attribution says. I was expecting to see pretty poor attribution because just everything I've heard about it being a discovery channel and Pinterest having this like long view through consideration window. I don't even know. Like I think in platform we're like a 5x, but I don't look at that or believe it. In Northbeam, we're above a 1. And so our normal targets depends on kind of the channel. We're probably somewhere on like a 0.9 to 1 on meta and just like average overall. But so and Pinterest, we're above a 1. So I'm pumped about that. We started with a very high percent of new visitors. It was like 80%. It's dropped. I think we're around 70% right now. And so very solid on like a 1-day click. And so out the gate, we even kind of scaled it up a little bit because we felt confident in it. We did a 2-week holdout test, 40% holdout. So we targeted, 60% of the country. Haus helps to randomize it. They make it super easy. And we did a 2-week test with a 2-week post-test observation window. We haven't gotten the results back of that. We probably will soon, but we saw a great lift. It was probably our second best cost per incremental. I can't share the cost per incremental, but it was pretty solid, definitely profitable on that basis. And again, I do think it's going to get better over time. We'll have that post-treatment window where we can see if the results actually get better, if it is kind of higher funnel and longer, consideration phase. But yeah, it was about a 3.5% incremental lift on new customer orders. So it gave us probably our second best, cost per incremental. So I'm pumped about it. We're now scaling it up a little bit. We'll see how much we can really do. As we talked about the episode with Dave, I don't have that high expectations. We're not going to get it to like 10K a day, but if we can get 3, 4, yeah. But I'm pumped about it. Any questions about it?
Yeah, I have a question. So, what was the targeting and what did the ads look like?
Yeah, great question. So we kept the account pretty simple. We just did one campaign for home feed and one for search. we started 50-50 budget. So let's say 1,000 a day. And then we just allocated to where we saw performing better, which was home. Targeting was a mix of interest and keywords. So Pinterest kind of just ingested some of our data and gave some recommendations. For us, there was a lot of obviously there's makeup, skincare, but kind of adjacent ones. Like there was travel, like finance was a big one. Gardening, things that maybe our audience is interested in that's adjacent. And then for creative, when Dave said that like you shouldn't just take your meta stuff and put it on Pinterest, but you should really, make things that are really relevant. Yeah, we didn't do that. We went with our stuff, but it honestly for us, our stuff pretty performs. I feel like same thing for you guys. Like your creative looks pretty similar across placements. For us, it does. So we went just with video. That was our reps recommendation. Just our video. We just took our top, 3-4 meta ads recently, our top few videos and just launched them. And what's really cool, so we just met with our reps about kind of scaling strategies. And what they recommended, and it's super simple. We tossed not all of the interest, but a ton of interest into the same campaign. But it's like an observation audience on Google. You can view the breakdown by performance. So it's not like Meta where you have an interest stack and you just see the results of the whole ad set. And if you want to break it out and say, hey, how did travel compare to gardening? You have to split it out into a separate ad set. You can actually put it together so you get the benefits of consolidation. But then you can go through and say, hey, like we spent $1,000 in the last week on finance and it's way above, our CPA target. So like, let's cut that one down. So that's kind of been our scaling strategy right now. It's just like adding a bunch of them.
Dude, awesome. I'm here for the Pinterest redemption arc. They've gotten a lot of shade over the last couple of years, I think.
Can I ask one more follow up on that real quick? So Cody, are you going to do another budget test, like another 2-sell? You found out that your existing spend is very incremental. Do you have any plans to say, okay, like as a follow-up test, let's do sell A as the 2K per day, but then maybe let's do like a sell B at 4K per day. So you can basically find that sweet spot of like when it really starts to fall off incrementally so you can optimize that spend.
That's a really good question. And I know we got some questions about that. So I'd also love to hear how you guys kind of do it and think about it. Currently, we just did a 2-sell as just a very easy, like, is this channel incremental or not? And I think for right now, I think we just want to like think about how we're prioritizing like geo tests in general across channels. For now, we just feel confident that it is. And we're just going to push spend until we see MTA go down. And we just know we have like an incrementality factor. I don't know if you guys do that where you find like the incrementality factor from Haus compared to Northbeam. But we may say, hey, we think whatever our Northbeam number is, it's really Haus is really saying it's double the amount of value or 1.5 times value. And so that'll just help set what our MTA target is. So because it was so incremental, we're happy to say, hey, we can run this at like a 0.7, 0.8. And we'll just scale it until that threshold. And maybe we find that's 3K day, 4K day. And I think because it's not that big of a channel for us, it's probably not necessarily worth it. But if we got to a point where we really wanted to try to scale it and find another level and like really prove out the incrementality of that spend threshold, then we would. Or the other one would be if then we decided we wanted to put another objective on top of it. Like if we wanted to run like a clicks thing or a reach thing on top of it, we would totally then do a 3-sell. But I feel like we just have a bunch of other tests we want to get to. Like we're trying to launch Twitter again and do a hold out on that. And you can only do a 3-sell. Like you can't run any other tests while you're running a 3-sell. So I think we would just have to weigh like the return on that strategy.
Interesting.
Awesome. Connor, do you have any other questions?
No, that's super interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say you're kind of balancing that between like running these other channel level tests, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think because it's like it's not that much. It's like, hey, it's like we might spend another 1K day most, right? And if we learn that's like super incremental or not, maybe that's not going to make a huge difference. Versus if we find out that 50% higher budget on YouTube, which we may run in a 3-sell, is obviously a much larger budget for us. It's going to make a bigger difference. Like we may decide to prioritize that. So I think in the future, like that would probably make the most sense is like we ran a TikTok test, same thing, 2-sell, just incremental or not. But then I think really the next step is, hey, how much can we scale here?
Yeah.
That would be then the 3-sell strategy next.
That's super interesting.
Sick. All right, boom. Wraps up our second official segment of Test of the Week. We will be talking more about incrementality because today's episode, we're opening the listener mailbag, going through Q&As that Cody fielded from D2C, Twitter, and other sources. I've got them laid out here in what I think is like a pretty good order. We're going to start talking about team and then very, very relevant to the marketing operators. Most of them are about marketing channels and things like that. All right, cool. The first question comes from Lily Ackerley. And Connor, I'm going to hand this one off to you. She asks, how did you hire your teams and what roles, departments, skills did you prioritize as the company grew in revenue?
Yeah, so we prioritized our core competencies first and foremost. Like I'm a huge believer that to the extent that you can like own the skill and the team that's operating and executing on the channels that are driving the most of your revenue, you should. So for us, that's paid media and that's our retention channel. So that's where we focused our hires first. Our biggest teams are across the retention teams and across the paid media teams. That includes both like the more technical media buying, like budget forecasting side of the paid media team and the creative side of the team. So that's where we've really focused. But ultimately, we also have an internal team now for influencer. We have an internal team now for brand partnerships, for community. But those were definitely a little bit secondary just because those don't drive as much revenue as paid media and retention do. So I think about it that way. Like it's most important to have the team built out that's driving the most revenue for you. So you have to kind of ask yourself, what channels are those? And then go build those teams out. In terms of like the roles that we decided to hire first, second, third, I'm a huge believer in hiring the thinkers before you hire the doers. The reason being is ultimately you need to have doers in your company, but unless you have thinkers, i.e. managers, kind of driving the strategy and setting priorities and building systems and processes to make all the work for the doers and the executors super efficient, like it's not going to work out. Like you can't have a bunch of designers and copywriters and video editors and creative strategists and media buyers if you don't have like the high level strategy guiding what those folks are working on each day. So that's how I thought about it. So basically what that looks like functionally is last year in the first part of the year, we hired like all of our directors to really own each channel, again, starting with paid media, then going into retention, then going into some of these other channels, like influencer, brand management, community, affiliate. And now as we've started to like really stress the workload on those people, then we go one level lower. Now we're hiring the managers to really take on even more of the execution for those channel level directors. And now as we start to build out the manager levels in our team, which I would say are like 50% thinking, 50% doing, now we're really starting to get into the roles that are like 70% doing, 30% thinking. So now we have like another creative strategist that's just like writing briefs all day, giving feedback on assets. Now we have an internal copywriter, an internal designer. And now we're really starting to build out that like doer level of our org, and really starting to bring some of these competencies more and more internal. And like, as we continue to scale, I think that's going to be the roles that we hire the most is these doer levels that are actually executing all of the strategies and tactics that we want to do on a day-to-day.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of parts of that. There's some I don't agree with, and it's probably because I'm wrong, but I'll share about that in a second. But yeah, I agree with like, do the thing that's core to you do business. Like I heard it from somebody, they're like, don't outsource your lovemaking. Like if this is the thing that makes you special, don't outsource that. And I think you just have to be really clear on what the thing is that makes you special, right? There are a lot of companies that are like, hey, we're a tech company or we're a data company, and they're not. Like you're an e-commerce company. So our first hire was product. She's now our chief product and operations officer. Like she was the first hire, like almost 2 years before we even launched. So like we knew product was going to be, specialty. We knew creative was going to be. I came in and did, media buying and always wanted that in-house because I think, if it's something that you're going to do every single day and it's going to be how you're driving revenue and value, you should have that in-house. And then I think the things that are, you should build teams around them as you grow. I think that the things that are not your primary skill set is why we work with Haus, because we don't have a team of, data scientists at our disposal who are great with that. We don't have, we're just now building a data team. Like we work with external partners to do things like that. I think I was much more like, hey, it has to be in-house earlier. I think it's just about figuring out, like you said, like what are the core things that you need in-house. I would say the part where we differ, and again, I think I'm wrong on this, is like the whole strategy versus, doing. I always felt like we didn't want, I'm much more of a doer, and I think our culture is much more of a doer culture. And I think there's pros and cons to that. But listen, we're 9 figures, and I've been media buying on all platforms all week because I don't have that many people on my team, and some of them were away. So like, there's pros and cons to all of it. So like, I think I'm probably in the wrong. We like just have a director of growth starting tomorrow. But I think what I would have done differently of building the team is I would have hired senior people, directors, but made sure that they actually could also be doers. Like I feel like Ridge does a pretty good job of this from what I've seen. I think xCloud does as well. Like you've got directors of things, but it sounds like they're also able to push buttons and do the work as well. And I think now as we grow, we've got senior people, and then we've got like a lot of like lower level, coordinators. But I think we're really looking to have a director everywhere, and it's just going to be very clear when they're hired. Hey, like this is a hybrid role. Like nobody here is just a manager. Nobody here is just a director. Like, yeah, you can do a little strategy, but to me, it's like 80-10 and it's 20% or 80-20 and it's 20%, spending time on strategy. And it's really 80% actually grinding and putting in the work. But I think we're going in that direction, but we didn't start with the high level and strategy because on the other end is like, if you just start with strategy, then you've got nobody who's actually doing the work. And that's not great either.
Cody, I 100% agree with you. Actually, like one of the filters we have in our hiring process is to actually give someone a project. Cause I feel very strongly that you cannot be it's actually been hard for me to transition from like doing more and more thinking work. And I've just had to do it because I realize I'm actually more productive by like thinking and delegating to the team than I could be as an IC at this point. I actually, as one of the filters we have in hiring, we always give, no matter the role, it could be a head, director, VP level, they always have a doing project to complete. Because I truly believe you cannot be a thinker in an org if you do not have the ability to do, or you have not been a doer in a previous role. Like there's no way you could possibly know tactically what's possible if you've never been a tactician. So like I actually think it's funny that like it's even more important for me when I'm hiring people that I anticipate to be doing more thinking than doing, that they really execute incredibly well. Because otherwise, how could you potentially you can't be a producer of deliverables if you from a thinker's role if you don't have the ability to do those things yourself. I really believe that. So it's kind of like it's almost backwards. Like we're doing like a big doing project in the interview process to hire thinkers, but I think it's critical.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like I don't even think about things in terms of doing versus thinking because I think we're so far on like the doing side, and it's probably to a fault. But like maybe it's because you guys are so much larger than us that you just have that that luxury to be able to kind of think longer term and have more people. So it must be nice. I can't wait to get there one day.
There's still a lot of doing going on.
You guys aren't just thinking over there?
Not just thinking. Not just thinking.
So next, we're going to talk about two things, customer service and artificial intelligence. Our next sponsor, Richpanel, is a platform that combines the best of AI and humans to respond faster, manage all channels, and scale your customer service. They do this in a number of different ways, but their ultimate goal is for you to get every agent responding as if they're your best agent. First, my favorite part, which actually isn't AI related, is better self-serve tools so that your customers and prospects can find the information they need without ever submitting a ticket. But when they do submit a ticket, they have artificial intelligence that learn from your previous interactions. So it's not a ChatGPT wrapper that's just going to rattle off whatever it thinks is the best way to respond to a customer. It's actually going to understand what are historical interactions you've had to recommend and automate the responses to customers submitting new tickets, as well as new ways to augment your current agents so that they can respond more efficiently and empathetically. If you're interested in Richpanel and bringing AI to your customer service teams, visit richpanel.com. Okay, so related question, and it's about both Lily Assis, and we kind of touched on it, but I'd love for one of you guys to speak to it explicitly. How you think about insourcing versus outsourcing as you kind of grow. And then the second question, which is related in my mind, is Andy asked, how do you strike the right balance between full-time employees, agencies, consultants, and freelancers? Who wants to take a pass at that?
Why don't you take it?
Ooh, okay. I'll tell you one really formative experience that I had, which was probably a net neutral impact, because I'll describe both pros and cons to it, is I went to the Manscaped office in 2020. They were, I think they'd just done over $100 million, but I don't think they'd quite hit peak D2C darling yet. And I went in and they're just machines. All the founders have previous D2C experience. They just are tried and true operators, I would describe them. And what they said to me at the time was they were like, yeah, we hate agencies. We do everything internally. They had like 6 full-time engineers. They had the full influencer partnership team, all media buying in-house. They were like, they had a 3D render artist on staff, like everything, like soup to nuts, more or less seemed to be done internally. I don't think that's still the case, but was largely at the time. And I like that approach. That's like a full like doers approach. Get people who can come in and execute. Obviously, there's a strategy piece to that. So that's kind of how Ridge was built. Also, the backstory of Ridge is Sean and I came from an agency background, so we were like inherently doers. So I do think we've had like the bottoms up approach of like people who were tacticians, and then some of our most senior leaders have like leveled their way up into a more balanced role of delegating and thinking and strategizing. But it's super, super tough. And especially the last couple of years, I think with how rapidly things have changed, you're better off like just outsourcing to someone who has done it before. You can provide the strategy. You can help set the objectives for some new initiative, outsource, and then kind of test the waters. And if it works, maybe insourcing at some point. And the example that I'll give you is like, we're fumbling our way through like TikTok shops right now, which is just like a completely different function. The massive amount of product seeding, like even the way we're doing outreach, the way you're setting up the shop, the whole thing we have done internally. And I think it's been a struggle. And like, now we're like, okay, yeah, how do we bring in a consultant to help make this way higher leverage? Let's get best practices in place earlier, people who know how to do it best. Let's have a doer. Let's pay for a doer to do it. And then we'll decide whether we want to like, insource that and take it internally. So that's kind of been our general approach. It's really changed over time.
How do you just decide, like, I know like a new function, it sounds like you might want to outsource that or at least have a consultant, but how about the things that are like currently happening in the business? How do you decide, like, why do you guys buy Google search in-house versus not? Like, I get paid social, but like, why that? Why email or not? And then like creative, how much of your creative is internally versus with partners?
Yeah, totally. That's a good question. I mean, ultimately it comes down to like, we're still largely built around the core competencies. The first couple hires at Ridge were, we brought in a designer, we had a retention manager, and then I was doing all the media buying. We didn't even produce content in-house. This was like 2017, Facebook ads, super cheap, super effective. Like I could like screw around in Photoshop and create like an ad we'd spend $2 million on or whatever. So I've always thought, and we had like tech internally. We would manage like website updates. And that's like the performance stack: retention, media buying, landing pages. That's what we had set up initially in 2017. Those teams have really just been built out way more significantly, right? We're media buying across a bunch of channels and markets for multiple categories. We have an additional developer. We have e-com ops. Like that's a whole operation now, especially with all the Shopify instances that we have. Retention's larger. And then one of the other large teams that I've talked about on previous episodes is performance creative. That became such a key factor post like iOS 14 that was something we very quickly needed to take internally and be really good at. But even then, we still source creative from external partners. Like we'll test with narrative, we'll kind of battle test the content we're creating against external sources and just try to ensure to the best of our ability that we're getting the best stuff out there. And then we do partnerships internally, which is like the other one. But partnerships, I'll give the example of something that has just changed so dramatically. For a long time, we had a very particular approach to how we partnered with YouTube creators. Partnerships today is like, it's more distributed. It feels like it's really way more spray and pray. You're working with TikTok shops, affiliate looks way different. Like there are so many kind of looks and feels to it that it's almost as if we just have to identify what are the areas of opportunity and then what's the best way to like prioritize those and then execute on those. And I think more often than not, it's about bringing in a third party to say, hey, yeah, let's test TikTok shops in the most efficient way we can. Not necessarily from a cost perspective, but from a learning perspective. That's how we've been trying to approach it.
Why like dev in-house? I feel like that's not a super common one. Is there like a specific reason that you would do that? And if you were to build today, would you do that again?
Okay, great question. Because that's like, I'm hearing about Connor's team, and you guys don't do development in-house.
We're hybrid. So we do have an internal dev team, but then we also outsource some dev.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. I don't mean to convolute the question. I mean, we had a developer from the beginning. which is just kind of developed into its own kind of workflow. There's a really terrible answer to that, but like it's just kind of the way that it is. And we're also able to more rapidly iterate. We've able to build a lot of custom features. And especially as we've expanded categories, we've just had more e-com needs. Expanding categories, expanding markets, there's just like exponential real estate that we need to be developing custom features for. So we found it helpful. Our technical person also just handles, like along with like the e-com site, there's like some internal tools that we have, or like just all sorts of like random technical stuff that just kind of falls under his jurisdiction.
It's just like I said, like it's not ever going to be our core competency. I think one day maybe it would make sense, especially to have, like the speed. I think there's a lot of things that we could do. It's like we don't spend that much on it, like the agency that we work with, and like they give, we do design in-house, but like they have like multiple competencies across dev, like front end, back end, that like if we were to hire one person, it wouldn't really work. So I think that's one of the advantages to working with an agency, is when you're smaller and you don't have that much budget for a function, you can work with a creative agency who's got a copywriter, an editor, a producer, a script writer, something like that, all on one team. And it's obviously fractionalized, versus if you were to hire internally to do that, it might cost you 4 times as much. So I think part of it is like a scale thing.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. But cool. I do want to get through some more of these Q&As. We're 38 minutes in or so. We touched on this a bit earlier in our test of the week. But Ad Olive, anonymous account, seems like some sort of olive themed advertising account, asked, how do you measure incrementality for each channel? Actionable step-by-step process. They said, love the pod. So Cody, you'd kind of started touching on it with how you're prioritizing like higher leverage tests, but maybe you could give us like the quick run through of how you're approaching it as a whole.
For sure. Yeah. So I will go kind of just like a 101 introductory to incrementality. So you want to do most likely what's called a holdout, geo holdout, which is where you are going to set up an experiment where you're going to have, let's say 2 different cells or 2 different, groups. One of them will be the holdout, which means they will not get the media in question. So all other variables should be constant with across both cells. So like, let's say you wanted to test Twitter, and you want to test how incremental Twitter is, and you normally run Meta, Google, TikTok, and YouTube. You would still run all of those channels across the entire country, because that's not what you're testing. You want to keep those variables constant across the cells. And then the only change between the 2 cells, the holdout versus treatment group, would be Twitter. And you would, and Haus makes this super easy, as you guys know, but you would input, your spend, how many of your main KPIs per week you get, which is, for us new customers, is probably for you guys too, new customers. And you would get like a calculator, like a table of the recommendations of how large of a holdout you want to do. So like a 20% holdout, which would mean you're going to run Twitter in 80% of the country, and 20% of it you're not going to. A 50% holdout would mean that you're going to run it in half of the country. And what you're going to do is you're simply going to look over time, whatever time period you selected. Most commonly it's probably 2 weeks, but it can be up to, we've ran a 12-week holdout on like a reach test. And you're just going to look at the end of it and say, hey, it's going to be hooked up either to your data warehouse or to your Shopify. And you're going to say, hey, here's how much we spent on that test. Here's how much we spent on Twitter. We spent $60,000 over a 2-week period on Twitter. Here is how many new customers we got in the treatment group where we ran Twitter versus where we did not. And so that's going to tell you how much of a lift you got. And you might say, hey, we actually see a 5% lift in new customer orders when we run Twitter versus when we don't. And if you divide the number of orders you get divided by how much you spent, you may get a cost per incremental, which is similar concept, but a little bit different to like a cost per acquisition. And then that will help you understand how incremental that channel is for you. And you're able to control variables, so you have everything else the same across those 2 cells, and you're doing them at the same time. So you're really limiting and controlling as many variables as you can. And one thing I like about it is you're not looking at clicks, you're not looking at any attribution thing. You're simply looking at, it's very scientific. Here's how much we spent. Here's how much of what we really care about, which is new customer orders, we got. You're not looking at like any pixel or attribution things.
Totally. The one thing that I'll add there, because I was thinking about this a little bit further, Haus, our beloved sponsor, awesome tool to approach. And that's what we're using to like, we have a very diversified marketing approach in the US for our EDC wallet business. So like we're using Haus right now to sift through channel by channel, measuring incrementality. So we just get more clarity on how each of those performing, the total impact of each channel. But the flip side is, and I'm thinking from like a much smaller brand's perspective, like just thinking incrementally is maybe a little bit different. And I'll talk about like blurring the line a little bit. But like our travel business right now, we're on Facebook and Google. And I'm like, look, if we're driving incremental results, it means if we spend more on Facebook, we'll do more in travel revenue. Like we don't I don't want a perfect scientific experiment to like cloud our ability to identify whether something's working or not. It can be really simple for much smaller businesses. So that's worth thinking about as well. And looking period over period.
I'm the biggest fan of Haus there is. We haven't ran a Haus test on meta conversions because I don't doubt the incrementality. I probably should, but I've just been pushing it off because same thing. When we scaled meta, revenue goes up. When we pull back meta, revenue goes down. So yeah.
And it's just that idea of like thinking incrementally rather than like trusting what in-platform ROAS is, I think is like the key thing, at least how we've been thinking about it. But Connor, Roland, anything you'd add on the incrementality front?
I think what Cody mentioned, like that is the gold standard, right? Like that's like the most scientific way to set up an incrementality test. The truth of the matter is that most brands aren't at that size to set that up and like onboard a tool like Haus and have spend levels to like warrant that and revenue levels to warrant that. I think what's important though, and there's probably 100 ways to do this, like whenever you're testing anything that's new, you have to have a model for measurement and comparison that's as apples to apples as you possibly can. And it's not going to be as perfect as the methodology that Cody just mentioned. But like let's say I'm launching Twitter, and this is a real example. Like last year we launched Twitter. We did not have Haus set up yet. So we didn't have the ability to set up a geo holdout test. But when I was launching Twitter, I thought to myself, well, this is a paid social channel. I assume that it's going to have roughly the same net new visit rate or better. And I know what my benchmarks in Facebook need to be to hit my goals, my blended goals. And I also know what my actual Facebook one-day click ROAS is. So because of all those things, because they're similar stages in the funnel, I can launch Twitter and then compare performance of Twitter to my Facebook benchmark, to my Facebook actual, and then make a decision if that's a smart new channel, a high performing incremental new channel for us. Last year we launched Twitter and it checked all those boxes. So we decided that, you know what, this is a lot of net new visitors. The one day click ROAS was above our benchmarks we set for Facebook and comparable to Facebook as a whole. So to us, our conclusion was, well, that's an incremental channel. Like that's one way to set it up. You could do that same thing with like post-purchase survey. I think the most important thing is to like have some sort of methodology that gives you an apples to apples comparison. If you don't have that, then you're going to like run a channel or a test and have a bunch of data that you don't know how to make sense of. Now, we are going to do the incrementality, the most scientifically controlled incrementality test on Twitter at some point. But like I have confidence in Twitter through that methodology. And I'm hoping we'll see that play out in the holdout test too. But like smaller brands, you just need to have this methodology. If you don't have a holdout test tool in mind before you even launch the channel, it's the same way you look at creative tests, right? Like if I want to launch a new batch of statics, I'm going to compare that to like my account-wide aggregate of statics and my overall testing budget. If it's a better one-day click, then I'm going to say, well, this is an incrementally high-performing static compared to my account-wide statics or my account-wide testing. Like that is just an attribution incrementality methodology that we've built out internally that's not reliant on like a geo holdout. So you can do that no matter the size, right? You could be doing 10 grand a month in revenue. You could be doing $1 million a month in revenue. And like that approach would be like a fairly valid way to approach incrementality with creative or new channels or anything you're testing, I think.
100%. Not quite as scientific, but like any methodology is better than no methodology.
Definitely. Yep.
Okay, cool. So pivoting from, smaller brands just introducing channels, we've got a question from, and I love this. Well, it's Zach B, but his handle on Twitter is Let's Go to the Bar 2, the number 2.
So like good.
The sequel. He asks, and Cody, I'm going to hand this one to you first. How do you know once you've maxed out a specific channel, i.e., and this sounds like a good problem to have, Meta at 30 to 50K a day, running 10 to 20 new concepts weekly, can't scale past, constantly testing new angles, audiences, pain points, creative types, offers, LP, CRO, and apparently he's maxed out. What do you do as the next step for growth?
This is a good question because I feel like you do an entire episode on this, and I don't think there's a one right answer. I also think you could take this from so many different ways. Like I think Rich has done such a great job of category expansion and new product expansion to be able to reach new audiences. Yeah, you can take this in terms of testing new personas, new creatives, new campaign objectives on that same channel to try to get more reach, or you can go and test other channels, or you can test other. Yeah, I guess you can go and test other channels. So I think there are multiple ways to try to grow the business, and it's not always one. I do think a lot of times marketers will think about, just how do I spend more on the same thing, and they might not realize their market is tapped, and maybe they need product expansion, or they need to crack a new audience, kind of like Connor Rowland has talked about, persona-based targeting to reach. So I think that I would probably test those things and think about it. I don't know if you guys have any ways to think about how you would figure out like, hey, am I just running into a TAM issue here? Or because 30 to 50K a day is like pretty significant, or is it a creative diversity issue, or do I need to get more reach? So like before I say too much about incrementality, like how would you guys think about that?
The really important caveat here is product and TAM. Like there are some businesses that like should be able to scale to hundreds of thousands of dollars a day if you've got the right product, price point, large market, et cetera. So I think that is an important caveat. But Connor, what were you going to say?
Well, it sounds so in Zach B's situation, it sounds like he is like my guess is that he's going after like it's the same product, but he is going after different sub personas, I assume, because he's testing a bunch of new creative, he's testing landers, he's doing CRO. Like I'm assuming, it says he's going after different audiences, like. Because there's one thing to say, like if you're trying to go from, let's say, like you have a benchmark in Facebook and you know that benchmark is where you're profitable. Anything below that's not profitable. If you are just trying to vertically scale what's currently in your account, let's say from 20K to 30K or 20K to 25K, and every time you drop below that benchmark, you're like, like nothing's working here. That's a worse approach than what Zach B is describing here, where he's actually taking swings at cracking new personas. And I'm assuming he's trying to scale his spend to reach more like top line scale by spending more on these new creatives, landers, audience, sub persona targets, etc. Like it sounds like he is probably hitting more of a wall. And like I think he could probably be more confident that maybe he's getting closer to maxing out this channel. And that's like, if you can honestly look at yourself and say, I've tried to go from, 20K to 30K or 20 to 25K. And I've tried to do it through like legitimate horizontal scaling through all these different levers that, can drive scale in an ad account. And you just cannot get to that increased spend level at that, that 1 day click or whatever that benchmark is that you need to be at. I think that's when you need to look and say, listen, we've taken all the swings we can or should have taken, and we're still not cutting it. Like, maybe we need to go think about a new channel, or maybe we need to go think about product expansion. So it seems to me like Zach B is in a situation where he is trying all of the swings that he should be trying, but this also relies on him understanding his benchmarks. Like you got to know like what's the absolute lowest we can go. If you're dropping below that and you're trying all these things, then I think it's time to move on and think about channel expansion or like product funnel expansion.
Yeah. So I think you're right. We're on the same page. I will say, like, in Ridge's case, one way we have unlocked additional scale was just like leaning into seasonal moments more. And maybe that's like super obvious here, but when I joined 7.5 years ago, our Father's Day campaign was like maybe 1-2 emails, like it was minimal. And then we really like now May and June, or June in particular, has historically been able to be as big as the previous November. So we've created like almost Q4 level demand around Father's Day. We are a great gifting product, but if you can find unlocks like that might be a little bit different than just like persona targeting or new angles or new landers, it could be valuable. I'd say the same thing, smaller examples of success for us, but like anniversary sale Q1 or sweepstakes where we give away Jeeps and Broncos and stuff in August is just like a completely different reason for someone to buy than what we would have gotten to without creating like a dedicated multi-week moment. So that's one thought. But then two is like, yeah, dude, if you're spending 30, 50K a day, I imagine you're profitable. It's working across some amount of personas. It just feels like channel diversification is like the right next step.
All of us are Haus customers and very big fans. In fact, I've actually been told I talk about Haus more than my own daughter. So what is Haus? Haus is a marketing science and experimentation platform that enables you to measure true incrementality and allocate budget efficiently to maximize growth and profitability. Haus allows you to comprehensively measure your marketing across all channels to measure the true incremental impact of all of your channels on retail, Amazon, DTC, etc. Haus allows you to design and launch experiments in minutes and get results in as little as 2 weeks. So we are all actual customers of Haus. We all use it. I actually got the both Connors onto it. I was just such a big fan, and I just couldn't help but share some of the tests that we were running. And I thought it was super cool. And I knew we had a group chat going, and I knew that both of these guys were spending on a lot of different, channels and platforms. And we were all looking at things similarly, but really looking to kind of take a step up. So yeah, if it's good enough for me to sell these guys on it, I think it's good enough for you guys to try out.
As you can tell, we could do a whole episode about Haus, and we probably will at some point, but this is just the ad read. So if you want to add marketing rigor to your organization and make the most impact with your spend, go to haus.io/operators. That's HAUS.io/operators to learn more.
Connor, with that seasonality, does that necessarily have to be? Because, like, for example, this year, one of the seasonal angles we started to expand into was like this New Year's angle. We did not have that associated with an offer. Are you saying like a seasonal period that's just evergreen? It's not evergreen in the sense that it's seasonal, but you're not attaching an offer to it. Are you saying that's an opportunity that you think brands can tap into more?
Well, not that you don't need to attach an offer to it, but like, I mean, the example for us right now is like, I think we could make our Valentine's Day moment really big. We do have a men's wedding band business, so that helps quite a bit. But like, that was up 300% year over year because we were going to put in the legwork to like fully capitalize on that moment. And frankly, like, because what I would describe is like, how I describe what Zach says internally around just testing new concepts, new angles, a ton of new creative every week is like, it's like in-market iteration. That's like always on. We've got a system to like support that, where how can we bring like seasonal moments? Like how can we go to market with new campaigns and new reasons to buy that are like maybe a little bit more holistic? We're talking like full web takeover, email campaigns, new creative concept, and like just speaking to buying for a different reason than you otherwise would. I think at least our plan to continue scaling is to add more seasonal moments. So like I look at a Valentine's Day or a Mother's Day or even like Prime Day in July, I think we can get way bigger. So that is like just figuring out how to get those moments to be 2 or 3 times bigger is like at least one of our approaches that might not require any form of channel diversification from here.
What do you guys say? I feel like I've heard Sean say it's like the ceiling and the floor. You like try to raise the floor with the new launches. Is that right? Or is it the ceiling?
The ceiling. Yeah. It's very similar to my local and absolute maximum analogy, where it's just like we are iterating our way to a local maximum. And that's what you could be doing with these like in-market constant tests of creative and CRO and everything else. And like what you can do is take a step back and it's like, oh, what is like the weird stuff that we could like, get on the table that will unlock some higher maximum, maybe the absolute maximum. So that is the ceiling analogy as well.
So I think Zach needs to ask himself, is he taking big enough swings? Is he trying to iterate on the same, type of creative angles that he's unlocked, or does he need to think bigger than those and think, not just within Facebook too, like omni-channel campaigns, huge swings that he's never taken before that could be a massive unlock for his brand versus, the next new hook on an ad that has worked for a year and a half for his brand.
Right. And frankly, it's like we said that bigger swings. And then also like a really actionable thing is channel diversification. And like the answer is probably both, right? Like Zach's bio says he's growing a 9-figure personal men's care brand. So like it's definitely both, getting to 100 million, I think. Okay. So another question from Jeff Serini, very related, but he goes, what steps would you prescribe to a single channel brand, Meta, wanting to diversify into other channels? How to do it, quote unquote, right?
All right, I'll start with this, and I guess this kind of piggybacks off the other one of Zach's. But like, I think the first thing to figure out is like, all right, let's the stuff you guys just said 100% on, like new products, seasonal moments, like that's more important than where you're spending. But at a certain point, you are going to have to figure out where you should be spending. Is where is your next dollar best spent? And you've got to figure out like when is Meta actually starting to get diminishing returns that are going to be really, really negative, and it would actually be better on another channel. For us, I actually think we were pretty late to it, and we weren't spending on other channels. Really, the best way to do it would actually be like a House 3 cell test where you have different spend levels, and you can see. If you don't have that, I would just continue to try to scale and see if spending more is reaching new people and helping you acquire new customers. I would say first, and I think Dave talked about this, but where are your customers? Like I know that you guys have a lot of success with Snap. I don't think our customers are on Snap. Our customers are on Pinterest. Like I think that's number one, is where are your customers? What do you have the ability to measure? If you need a certain click ROAS to see success and prove it to finance, you're probably not going to have success with YouTube or have success with TV because your finance team is not going to be willing to wait around to get that data back. Where is your primary skill set? I think some of that is going to depend on your AOV, right? If you're a low AOV brand, you're probably not going to do that well on YouTube. If you're a super high AOV brand, maybe TikTok's not the thing. And then also, what do you have creative for? What do you have the right creative for? Do you have the ability to create creative that's contextually relevant to that channel? So I feel like I would ask a lot of those questions and then kind of think about it. And make a decision. And there's no one right answer where it's your next one has to be YouTube or the next one has to be TikTok.
But for you guys, Cody, it's you have Meta, and then what's channel number 2? Where are you guys spending the most time?
YouTube is second one right now. It's about 15 to 20% of mix.
What about you guys, Connor?
I mean, search, but if you were to keep it more top of funnel, then it would be TV. Streaming and linear. I mean, I think like in terms of immediate next steps, like how to do it right. I think Cody, you nailed it. Like what is the creative that's going to work there? And do you have the ability to either produce it yourselves or like work with an agency or an outsourced partner? But even one step like upstream of that is like, what's the best swing we can take with the current creative that we have? So if you're a brand that's typically scaled on Meta and you're trying to diversify and you have agreed that you think TikTok's your next best channel because your audience is there, like are you taking the best swing possible by launching your top performing videos inside of that channel? Do you have your attribution methodology thought? Like, do you have a good sense of what winning will even look like before you even launch? Like, that's where I would start. And then like, as you launch that channel with that, winning creative from Meta, then you can go and, work on producing, the more TikTok native stuff that is hopefully just like an iteration maybe as a starting point of what's worked in Meta, but just like more native to TikTok with that like style of shooting and overlay and like edit style. But like you don't need to necessarily go and like produce, like for us, when we launched Twitter, we just took our best performing statics from Meta and we launched them in Twitter. And then we started going and producing statics for Twitter that we thought would work because we thought they lent themselves better to Twitter. But like we launched it, we knew what winning looked like. We let that data or that creative gather baseline data. And then in the meantime, we're producing creative that we followed up with. So like that's where I would start with if you're like launching a new channel. You don't need to go like build it from the ground up, I don't think.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's like exactly how I've answered it in the past. No notes. Okay, cool. So, well, actually for me personally, like I have a lot of conversations about people wanting to diversify from Meta and then talking about influencer. And I always think like it's too big of a step. I'm like, if Meta is truly working, then you should just diversify into other like more similar channels. Like it makes sense to go into a TikTok or a Snap or a YouTube, or I think at least we're also seeing a lot of success on Twitter right now. It's great feed ad inventory. So that's how I answer that question. But our next one is about influencer. It's actually Jeff's first question. He's probably thinking the same thing. He's like, where do I diversify from Meta? Maybe I should go to influencer. He says, what percentage of revenue is influencer marketing for each? How much opportunity do you see in the influencer space for your brands? Connor, you want to take a first pass?
That's a great one. This one's a hard question. We don't look at, like, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but like, we don't look at from an attribution performance standpoint, like we don't look at influencer the same way that I would like measure a Meta or a TikTok or a YouTube or a streaming, like any paid media channel that I want to see a direct ROI on. That's probably different for a lot of brands out there. That's just the case for us because we have such a long consideration period. Like we don't see a ton. Like we do see directly attributable revenue, but it's not even close to what we see in like a conversion oriented like meta campaign, for example. So like I don't think about them the same way. Like I'm looking like at our influencer program, at least first and foremost, I do pay attention to performance. And like we do have attribution methodology and ways that we try to like drive revenue through influencer. But like the gold standard KPI I'm looking at and like the core reason we do influencer trying to achieve is just like arbitraging eyeballs with like super cheap CPMs. So like that's my first and foremost goal. That's what I'm tracking on like a monthly basis and seeing how many people are reaching, what the cost is for that, what the CPM is for that. What percentage of revenue for influencer marketing is right? Man, that's a really hard question. Like I've heard 1% of your top line revenue. I've heard 10% of your overall media budget. I like to look at it in relation to our top line revenue. I think that 1% number is a decent starting point, but then you're probably gonna have to flex it up or down. But again, it depends on whether or not, like if you're selling a $30 product and it's an impulse buy product, you can probably treat performance influencers somewhat similarly to how you treat like analyzing a meta on a 1-day click basis and like scale up or down by comparing like 1-day click versus maybe like last click GA attributed revenue. If you're not like we are, like we don't really look at it that way. And like we do use the performance attribution directionally, but like I'm just seeing it way more as like a brand awareness impressions arbitrage than I am like looking at it like a meta channel. So I think it depends a lot on the type of brand and product and like consideration period you have.
Totally. So you guys, like if you were a single channel and you're only advertising on Meta, you wouldn't go to influencer next.
If you had like an impulse buy product that you could directly measure revenue off of, then I would try it. But if not, like
But you wouldn't do it in the way that you guys are running influencer now. Right now, it's like brand awareness.
Yeah. Not like it's not. We do performance influencer, but it's not the core goal of our program. But like that's not to say I still wouldn't expand there immediately, but I do think influencer can be a performance channel with, direct attribution if you set it up that way and you have the product that lends itself to that.
Totally.
We're super excited to talk today about one of our sponsors, Aftersell. All three of us, Jones Road Beauty, Hexclad, and Ridge Wallet, are customers of Aftersell. If you're selling on Shopify, you need to find ways to boost your average order value. One of the best ways to do this is cross-selling and upselling, and there are a lot of different ways and places you can do this. One of the best places to do it is right when that conversion is happening, and that is exactly what Aftersell facilitates for you. So what actually is Aftersell? Aftersell is a widget that you install on your website, and on the post-purchase page, right after someone's completed their conversion, they're basically getting this upsell and or cross-sell. It's super seamless. It's one click. And it adds it to the order. They do not have to go through checkout again. It's really just free, not free, but it's incremental revenue that you're getting from someone that's already bought from you. One thing I love about Aftersell is you can decide to optimize it a ton or not at all. Either way, it's going to drive you a ton of incremental revenue. And if you have the team and the bandwidth and you want to optimize it, you can do all sorts of analysis on which products are most likely to be bought with other products, doing those sequential order and market basket analyses. And you can literally build out different funnels, as many as you'd want for different products, depending on what that first ordered product was, and then upsell them super intentionally based on that first order product. So love Aftersell. It's driven 6 figures of incremental revenue for us in a very short period of time. And I highly recommend it. If you want to check them out, head over to aftersell.com.
Cody, what about you?
So, and I want to hear about how you guys do it, because I think you guys do influencer very differently and have spent a lot more and had a lot more success. We also consider influencer a brand channel. I think in beauty, I don't really know anyone who's considering influencer like a performance channel. So influencers on our brand team, I'll say we spend so let's say hypothetically, we spend 30% of revenue on marketing. Media, so paid media, which is like digital, TV, direct mail, is 25% of that, right? And then like 4 to 5% of that might go to everything else, and one of those within it is influencer. So it's sub 1% of revenue, of net revenue. We consider it a brand channel. So we have our director influencer report to our head of brand, and our main KPI is EMV, earned media value. We use Tribe Dynamics. And so that's our main one. So the majority of it is just organic seeding, gifting. There's just like an always on like new prospecting acquisition campaign where we're reaching out to new influencers, new creators, sending them things. And then it's just very relationship based. And very excited for our next podcast where we're going to have Ashton on to kind of talk about it. We work with them. She's a genius. So like we just do what they say. And so we really don't do anything performance based. We'll do a little bit of like sponsored content. But it's really, we're looking at EMV ROAS. We're looking at, are we able to arbitrage attention and get really good content and get, solid, awareness based on that. So for us, it's a brand channel. I can't tell you the lift in revenue and things like that. I do want to test. We also we do have an affiliate program off the back half of that after we build relationships with people, and it drives meaningful volume, not anything crazy. I do want to test a little bit more of YouTube paid stuff. So curious, how you guys look at it, how you measure it. But yeah, for us, it's just like a brand earned media value channel, so kind of upper funnel. But I would say the one thing that's great about influencer, it's not like TV where you've got to do a 50K production and you've got to spend a certain amount on it. Like anyone can do influencer. It's scalable. If you're just launching your brand, I would get it in the hands of people. It has actually some of the best arbitrage you can have with CPMs because your product COGS should be obviously much cheaper than the value that it's giving somebody if they get it, but it's scalable. You can send 10 boxes out a month. You can send 100, you can send 10,000 boxes out a month. So to me, it's very scalable. And it's one of the better brand awareness methods that somebody can do if you're just starting out.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a way to grind it out with influencer, which frankly, we don't have experience in. That could be it could just be time and COGS and you're getting free posts in exchange for that. Could be incredibly high ROI. So definitely some possibility. We have, Ridge's history with influencer was we were really early to sponsoring YouTube creators. YouTube over indexes in men. There were very few people doing native integration. So 2017, we were working with Anthony Fantano, Theo Von, Tiger Belly. We were talking about Joe Rogan peripheral characters, basically was the initial strategy. And it was it was both the cost and awareness arbitrage, really affordable CPMs. It was a win-win for everybody because there was no other real advertiser demand. We were really easy to work with. We'd pay on time. We didn't give them crazy brand guidelines to work with. And what I always said was it was one of our most efficient channels, and it was really just a bodies game. So for a while, our influencer team was our biggest team because we just had to do mass outreach, mass negotiation, mass end product. So it was our most efficient channel, and it was our best brand building channel, truly kind of tapped into communities. We had people creating memes about Anthony Fantano being a wallet salesman that reviewed music. So it was really, there was a lot of really funny stuff like that. It's just different now. There's way more demand for YouTube advertisers. I think the average CPM from a YouTube creator has correlated perfectly with the mentions of the creator economy. All of a sudden, you've got people operationalizing, building businesses, really treating it like a business. And there's just less of an arbitrage opportunity. We still think of it as part performance. We look at everything through a performance lens. It's now one of our lower performing channels from an ROI perspective, but there's a lot of brand value to create there, especially right now, we're really just focused on large, deeper integration. So we had Jerry rig everything, shoot wallets against a Cybertruck in March, and it drove just a ton of revenue. It was an awesome piece of content. We got ad rights to that. We've been pulling it across channel. So that's where our focus has been. But again, wouldn't be my first option. Oh, and in terms of budget, in our biggest months of influencer spend, which is right around our peak moments, Father's Day, anniversary, Q4, et cetera, we'll get right around 8%, but then it really just kind of ebbs and flows. So that's of total spend, not of revenue.
And how do you measure the performance YouTube stuff?
So we have historical benchmarks on a one-day click basis from Northbeam. But one of the things that is weird about that is YouTube changed the UI a couple years ago. So it's way harder to click through. So it's clicks are different. We get codes. We have a post-purchase survey that's asking where someone came from. So we really just try to triangulate. It's by far the hardest from an attribution standpoint, unless you have a big hit. We did Smarter Every Day last year, early June. Drove almost $500,000 in revenue, and it's you couldn't miss it. The video went live and top line revenue just immediately increased, $100,000 or whatever. So, yeah, that's how we were approaching.
So when you look at it like I would imagine, could be wrong, but like you said about YouTube, like I would imagine a lot of the value doesn't come from a click based on that, in their posts. It's probably seeing it and searching it later. Do you have like a multiplier? You're like, hey, like whatever the click ROAS is, it's probably double or anything like that?
No, we don't have a multiplier for it. I really don't feel confident, and it's so different by channel. Like, you get super weird things like Philip DeFranco posts a video every single day. So his results are like really compressed. Like, you don't get views after 24 hours. He has like a news-based show. So it's like, it's the opposite of evergreen content. Then you have other like history channels where like it'll get views forever. We've seen it's been a couple months since I looked at this, but if you look at all the revenue attributed to influencer on like any given month, about 40% of that came from a video in a previous month. So all of a sudden there's these other videos that are just like generating sales forever. So it's really hard to get a multiple. It's like a really soft science. We're just trying to create really good, memorable content that like has some form of observable revenue. That's how I would describe it. And to touch on Jeff's second point, opportunity in the influencer space. Like I said, we're focused on big, deep integrations, getting ad rights, pulling that across more channels, making them more of moments. That's where we're focused. I want to do like a dozen of those this year. Smarter Every Day is an example. The Jerry Rig video is an example. There's so many more than that. Like I've mentioned us screwing up TikTok shops right now. There's like clearly a lot of value to create there. There's like just the way people consume content is so much different than it was a couple years ago. It seems to be one of the more rapidly evolving spaces from a strategy standpoint. So if I were Jeff, I'd look at some of those newer or like longer tail opportunities.
Connor, you also hit something that needs to be considered. Like if your main channel's meta, and because there's layers to influencer, right? Like there's the pure like, are we getting good like CPMs, impressions, and attributed revenue from this influencer organic audience? But if you're thinking to yourself, well, I also am big on meta. I don't have like, I have a gap in this certain content bucket, and I think I can like parlay this influencer market, this organic influencer marketing play into content sourcing. And now all of a sudden I've added a new channel that's a new channel on its own, but it's also feeding our core channel. Like those are probably the things you need to be thinking about of like, if you want to invest into influencer and how you want to do it. I'll also say like the viral moments, like that can come from adding influencers a channel there's probably more upside in terms of that than there are with some of these other channels. Like I'm scrolling through, Instagram, and I look at like Bethany Frankel. She's like one of the Real Housewife ladies. And all of a sudden she's like cooking some dish on a Hexclad product. And that was just from product seeding. Like that's not going to happen through a meta ad. Or like we went through all these like these loops to get like custom Rogan products. And we just seeded it to him because we bought a podcast ad with her, and like, all right, maybe this will show up on his feed. Probably not, but whatever. And it showed up on his feed. I'm like sitting at a bar playing pool one day, and one of our agency guys texts us and like, wow, nice work, guys. What'd you pay for this? I'm like, we didn't pay anything for that. Like we just made custom products and sent it to him, and he likes them. Like, sure, that's part of like the scale of our brand now that helps drive that. But like the virality component, you don't know when it's going to happen, but like the shots on net and influencer certainly increases the potential of some random post, like just totally taking off that you could never have facilitated or guessed, but like it happened.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I love it as a strategy. It's just like, if I'm looking for a repeatable, like ideally scalable channel, it's like never my second thought. All right, sweet. Okay. So question from me here. I've got a question for you guys. There's been, they did the Yotpo podcast. Yotpo's on their redemption arc. They were like, I think they were the most dumped on software brand or, e-com software. But I don't want to talk about Yotpo. What do you guys think is the most overrated piece of software right now? Cody, go.
Oh man, so many. It's so hard to pick. Let's see what's been on my mind lately. It's anything that's charging a variable fee where they're not really creating that much, variable revenue. And I think just like Yotpo, there's a lot of these that were super expensive, and they were really the best or the only one. And now there's so many out there that are just super competitive. Like, so, reviews is super competitive. One that we're thinking about switching from, like Gorgeous. I think Gorgeous used to be like the category creator, like the best, and it's wildly expensive. I don't know if you guys ever go in it or if you guys use it. It's like super outdated. It looks like it was built like 15 years ago. I think the UX is terrible. So like we're looking to switch. One of our sponsors of the show is Richpanel. Like not even an ad. Like I'm so impressed by Richpanel, and so we'll most definitely be switching to them. The UX is clean. It's really good. It's much faster. It's got the AI integration. So Connor, I think you said you guys are looking to switch as well.
We're in the midst of it. Yeah, we're on Customer now, which like they got acquired by Meta and then spun out by Meta. So they've got a bunch of stuff going on. And like so I'm actually answering a different question now, but my spiel to the team internally is like, from a customer experience perspective, we just need better tools. We need like a better foundational base for how we are servicing customers. And the team's impressed by Richpanel. So yeah, we're kind of in the same boat there. But I totally agree, dude. Gorgeous. When they rolled out the PPC pricing, it was insane. We've seen some of the most. I listened to Jason Lemkin on. I think that's his last name. He's the SaaStr guy.
Oh, I love him. He's great.
He was on My First Million a couple weeks ago. I think I'm quoting him correctly, but he said like at some point SaaS became, rather than software as a service, it became software as a ripoff. And it just feels like Gorgeous is in that bucket. Like we've seen a couple examples of these just like super value extraction like pricing models and things like that. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Definitely.
Yeah, no, we're honestly, dude, I was blown away. When we got that demo from Richpanel, like I was blown away. I told my team like we're switching like right away. I was like, when does our contract end? I never want to be that guy that's like, hey, like we've got to switch and jump around. So like trying to find the time when it's right to do so. And obviously you got to deal with contracts coming up and stuff like that. But that's another thing. These just like crazy long contracts that you get locked in, like Attentive as well. I don't think any of us use Attentive, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, dude, but Richpanel, I'm impressed, and I actually think it's going to help our team. From what I've heard from other people like that use it, I know Perfect White Tea uses it. Like your agents are able to just answer so many more tickets. I like their approach to AI, how they're not trying to just like have stuff automatically be done, but they're helping your agents actually get more done, not trying to replace people, but just help them be more efficient, which is like I think where a lot of the AI stuff is going to go.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
Who else? Any other ones that you guys want to start some more about? Who else do you think is overrated, and then maybe we can do underrated after that?
I don't want to call it a name, but there's a certain TV buying provider that I'm not a huge fan of. Like as I've started to dig into some of the other options out there, and like comparing like what's possible from a targeting perspective, what's possible from an attribution perspective, and like how some of these newer providers of that channel are innovating in those two areas, it's made me realize that the choice of this particular vendor, which is a large vendor, probably one of the largest in the space that I know a lot of folks use, is fairly antiquated in their practices with how they're going about targeting and how they're going about attribution. So I think that's one where like I think do your diligence when you're selecting like a linear and a streaming TV provider, and kind of there's some people really innovating out there, and some of the big players are going to get left behind if they don't start to take note and follow suit, I think.
Does it rhyme with Atari?
It may. Yeah. Can't confirm, but it might.
All right, Connor Ridge. We both did it. We both called out somebody. So who you got? Who you coming for?
Oh, dude, I'm struggling. I'm not.
Come on,
I mean,
if Sean could call out somebody every day, you can come up with one.
I'm not. Well, I'm having trouble with an underrated one as well. I feel like a lot of the software we're using is properly rated. I do think we're seeing like, I don't know. I just think a lot of the software that's coming out right now, like everybody wants to charge on volume. Everybody wants to charge a percentage of revenue. Like, and I can't help but think like we're in the final stages of that to some degree. I've been disappointed with Klaviyo in a lot of ways. We switched off. That was like very, I think we've talked about that before. We switched to Sendline. But Klaviyo's in the same boat. Like, I think they had this incredible opportunity. They were like the absolute go-to ESP for all D2C brands. They're like as close as you're going to get to like the central brain of any brand. And I don't think they've had very good product development. I know they invested a long time, or that what they told me for a long time was they invested in like reliability and scalability, which is cool. Like, I guess it would work most of the time. It did fail on like multiple Black Fridays over the last couple of years, but them raising their prices, I just felt like squeezed out. I was just disappointed more than anything, you know?
They definitely fumbled their lead quite a bit.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And there's nothing all that interesting. A bunch of nice to haves, like dynamic codes, dynamic blocks. Like, I guess there's pretty good segmenting. They have like smart sending, stuff like that. But like, I would have loved for them to have like rolled out a more proper CRM, better, you know, they plug into Facebook, they kind of plug into Google. That never really worked the way that I hoped it would.
Are they like the receiver?
I don't think that
they're like the receiver that's like run into the end zone and they like drop the ball on the 1 yard line because they're like headed in and they just like let it. You remember that trend when that like 3 receivers or running backs did that like a few years back and it was like a fumble?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically what I would say. I mean, they had a huge head start. They had a solid product. Everybody's super happy with it. And then just lack of product development and then increased prices while there are like comparable services that are just being way more aggressive. So that's
one I'll call out that I won't say they're underrated because I think they get the credit they deserve. But I will say like every time, and this is a sponsor, this is about Motion. Every time I get that Motion bill in our invoicing software, it blows me away because of how much like we use it in our day to day and the value we get from it. Like seriously, I'm like, and then I look at some of the billables we get from these other tools that like we just don't use nearly as much. They don't provide nearly as much value. Like I just think the value to price ratio that you get from Motion is absolutely one of the best in our entire tech software stack.
So I agree with that. I had that thought recently. Similar type of tool that I think is very valuable is Foreplay, to help manage like performance creative. You can index all the ads managers. Like that's like $100 a month or something. And I don't know how we do it otherwise. Like you're just kind of like saving ads, but then those can disappear from the ads library. That just seems kind of like a no-brainer, especially if you're scaled and you want to take like performance creative learning really seriously. They have a really cool product. So I'll call that one underrated.
Do you think Motion will build that functionality? Like that would make some sense, right? They're already the creative analysis tool. Would it make sense to kind of become the research portion of that as well?
I can see it.
Well, I got one. PDQ. So Liron, who's I think one of the co-founders that came to our office last week because we work with them. Just kind of meet the team when he was doing a tour, and they showed me a lot of the stuff that they're working on. I'm so impressed. Not a sponsor, not an investor or anything like that. I just think they're awesome. It's just like a Israeli team. They do like Amazon like shipping options in checkout. So like you can add on multiple options and people will get accurate like arrive by dates. But one thing I'm pumped about is they're doing a lot more with checkout. Like I think with like they're gonna like own a lot of stuff with checkout. So with checkout extensibility, I don't know if you guys feel like this, without us having a dev team internally, maybe this is the benefit of it. We haven't really tested that many things in checkout because it's hard to test and measure. They're doing like a no-code A/B testing checkout tool, which is going to be awesome. So you can add like upsells in there. You can add different, trust badges, like anything you can do with checkout extensibility. But like any marketer will be able to go in there and A/B test them. So that's something I know they have coming up on the roadmap that I'm like, I just can't wait to get my hands on. So I don't see that many people talking about PDQ, and it's helped us a lot. It's helped our margin a lot, just recover some shipping revenue.
No, yeah, I've never heard of it, but Salt Lake City based. So,
I thought they were Israeli. Maybe that's like their US based.
I think I got that right.
Yeah, it's pretty damn quick. But no, I don't see that many people talking about it, but it has helped us like very significantly.
Awesome. All right, perfect. I think we'll call it a wrap there. Covered a lot of ground from team building to marketing channel expansion to kind of just shooting the shit on the over and under on some e-com software businesses. That's a wrap for episode 8. Thank you to our sponsors, Motion, Aftersell, Richpanel, and Haus. We're going to do more Q&A episodes. This one was super fun. There were a lot of great questions. If you guys want your questions discussed, you can tweet at any of us, tweet at Marketing Operators, comment on YouTube. All of the above will ensure that we'll speak to it. So we'll let you decide from there. If you are enjoying the episode, make sure you like and subscribe. Appreciate everyone listening and looking forward to the next one.